good afternoon, everyone, and happy Pi Day 3.14 for any of you who are math geeks. My name is Gwendolyn Stansbury, and I'm the Director of IFPRI's Communications and Knowledge Management Division. I'd like to welcome all of you today to the launch of the second edition of IFPRI's annual flagship report. The 2012 Global Food Policy Report examines the major food policy issues, developments, and decisions of the past year and provides an outlook for 2013. In 2012, the global food system remained vulnerable. Challenged by stresses, crises, and policy failings, food and nutrition insecurity remained a harsh reality for many around the world. Today, nearly 870 million people are undernourished, and more than 2 billion suffer from micronutrient deficiencies. The need to improve the food system was an important topic throughout the development community in 2012. A number of countries made promising changes in food and agriculture-related policies, and there were noteworthy global commitments to strengthen aspects of food security. But 2012 was more notable, perhaps, for talk about food security rather than for actions to achieve it. Focusing on this, the theme of the 2012 Global Food Policy Report is Walk the Talk. We hope the report will inform stakeholders and decision makers around the world, help set research and policy agendas for 2013 and beyond, and most importantly, contribute to the improvement of food policy to the benefit of the world's poorest and most vulnerable. We are privileged to have several key speakers here today. IFPRI's Director General Shenggen Fan will discuss the major food policy developments in 2012 and emerging developments for 2013. He will be followed by three special guests we are very pleased to welcome. Mary Bowman, Administrator of the Economic Research Service at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Michael Elliott, President and CEO of ONE, and Andrew Steer, President and CEO of the World Resources Institute. They will provide their perspectives on the major developments influencing food and nutrition security. With that, I hand the floor to Shenggen Fan, and thank you very much.
Okay. Good. One? No. Okay, here we go. Well, good afternoon. I'm Shenggen Fan. Let me welcome all of you to this launch, 2012 Global Food Policy Report launch. Particularly, I wanted to welcome Michael, Mary, and Andrew in joining us. So Andrew will come here in a minute. So this is the second volume of our Global Food Policy Report. So last year we launched the first one. The major purpose of the report is to review the major developments in the area of food, agriculture, and rural development. Every year, we also select certain special topics. So in addition to review of the major food policy developments. So special topics for 2012 include agriculture productivity, which is so critical to increase future food production, green economy, particularly Rio +20 event, women in agriculture, employment, particularly youth employment in agriculture, and the U.S. European farm policies. For 2012, both the countries or regions have tried to develop new policies. And the most exciting is the regional developments or country developments in their effort in tackling food security, rural development, and poverty reduction. Then I will also go very briefly on the looking ahead or looking forward. So for 2012, the global food security remains very fragile. The new FAO data has shown that we still have more than 870 million hungry people in the world, despite the rapid progress we made in the last 2 or 3 decades. So you will see the difference between the the old and the new FAO estimates. So even the new number shows that there is a tremendous amount of poor people, hungry people in the world, 870. So if we continue business as usual, we are very far away from MDG goal. Welcome, Andrew. The MDG goal of having the percentage of hungry people by 2015. Even we achieve the MDG goals by 2015, we will still have 670 million hungry people in this world. So this is not acceptable. The number I described here is visible hunger. So you can observe somebody is hungry, underweight, or shoulder stunt. There's another dimension of hunger, that is hidden hunger from lack of micronutrients, vitamins. 2 billion people in this world are suffering from that. And Gwendolyn has mentioned the consequence of lack of micronutrients can do much damage to people's mental and physical health. And some of the current and future trends will make the global food security even more vulnerable. For example, drought and volatile food prices. So the food prices have been very volatile, very high for the last 5 or 6 years. Conflicts. It is still the case that many countries in Africa, such as DRC Congo, Mali, Somalia, and even the Middle East, Syria, continue to have conflicts, and many people have suffered, particularly hungry people have suffered from these conflicts. And the longer term drivers such as climate change, continued population growth, so will further threaten our global food system. So for 2012, as Gwendolyn said that there have been many discussions, many debates, many commitments. For example, China started its first so-called official document on agriculture. So this is their business as usual case. So every year they start with an official document on agriculture. So for 2012, the document focused on agriculture research investment. Then obviously the FAO also committed to work with other international organizations like IFPRI, the World Bank, IFAD, to introduce these voluntary land guidelines. The World Food Security Committee has approved that guidelines. Then G20 events has committed to increase agriculture productivity. Then G8, led by US, again committed to set up a new initiative such as New Alliance for Food and Nutrition Security by bringing the private sector, civil societies, and government together to commit themselves to increase investment in agriculture for food security. And Rio Plus 20, the green economy, is a big deal for 2012. So many people, 100,000 people gathered in Rio to debate about sustainable development, including the impact on food security, sustainable food security. And some of the positive development or real development in EU is the EU has really tried to set up a limit to use biofuel, to convert the food grains into biofuel production. So this is positive news, and we should encourage the EU and the US try to make sure that their biofuel production will not compromise poor people's food security. For 2012, many countries continued to use trade export bans to isolate their food market from the international markets. Tanzania was one case, although later the government relaxed the trade ban. Ukraine also threatened to use trade ban to make sure that the domestic wheat price remained low. And towards the end of the year, we didn't have a good end in 2012. That is the climate change negotiation in Doha. Again, not talks, but not actual commitment, to move to action. We were talking about a 2-degree world, a 2-degree higher world, but today it's not 2 degrees, 4 degrees. In Davos, the World Bank president, the IMF managing director we're talking about a 4-degree higher. Could you imagine a 4-degree higher planet? How does that will do to a global food security? I just cannot imagine. Maybe you have better imagination than I do. Now, to zoom into some of the special topics, so agriculture productivity in 2012 and in previous years, we have seen several big trends. One is the production, more production has come from developing countries. China, Brazil, India has counted more shares of global food production. We have also seen accelerated agriculture productivity in the last 2 decades. In the 60s, 70s, maybe up to 80s, total factor productivity, which is a measure of total output, net of total input, grow by probably 0.5% per year. But after 1990, in the last two decades, that growth rate has increased to 1.5%. So that's good news. So productivity growth has accelerated. But the bad news is the composition of this growth is not good. Majority of the productivity growth come from some of the emerging economies, China, India, Brazil, not Africa. So Africa's productivity growth remains very low. So what do we do in the future? We needed to develop national capacities in agriculture research. So IFPRI's program called ASTI, Agriculture Science and Technology Indicators, really show that it is Africa, it is some of the poor countries that underinvest in agriculture research, although recently the trend began to reverse. And to provide a better genetic materials and inputs, I think CGIAR can play a key role there to increase the genetic inputs in grain food production and create an enabling environment for rapid technology adoption. So on the one hand, we have to innovate new technologies. On the other hand, increase the use adoption of the existing technology. Green economy was a big deal, as I said. So sustainable and growing. What about food security? During Rio Plus 20, there were several initiatives launched by the event and launched by UN Secretary General. The Green Economy, Zero Hunger Challenge, launched by UN Secretary General, Zero Net Land and Forest Degradation. The bioeconomy has also gained ground. The bioeconomy is an economy where it will use another biotechnological methods. But the Rio Plus 20 lacked firm policy roadmap and a time frame. So no time frame, no roadmap. So what needs to be done? Number one, clear measures, time frames, and accountability mechanisms. Make sure that we have clear measures, they're measurable. Make sure that somebody is accountable for these measures. And we needed to create incentives, information for civil society and the private sector. The good news from Rio, and this from my own reading, is the private sector and the civil societies were very committed, but they need incentives, they need more information. Closing the gender gap, 2012 was a very good year for the gender work. The FAO, the SOFA, the joint work between FAO and IFPRI really put gender very high in agricultural development. The World Bank WDR report also focused on gender. In 2012, a Women's Empowerment in Agriculture Index was created jointly by IFPRI, USAID. I have seen some USAID colleagues here who are directly involved in that index, and Oxford Poverty and Human Development Group. And we have seen that development programs have become more gender aware instead of gender blind. Again, what can we do better in the future? We need more evidence, so evidence-based. And we need to strengthen women's assets. We know that when women own something, they are really empowered. And engage with women's group as real development partners, women's farmers organization, and make sure that our policy strategies integrate gender. I mean, CGIAR, IFPRI have already done that. Hopefully other development agencies, development programs, and national policies, national strategies integrate gender into their work. Jobs for Africa youth. We know that Africa's population is growing, particularly young people. The good news is there is a so-called population dividend, in this case a youth dividend. So if we do it right, it has great potential to develop agriculture. If we don't do it right, they will move to the cities, create problems for urban and the rural population. To realize this potential, we need to release some of the constraints to land, capital, and the skills of these young farmers, young population in Africa. And the programs must be friendly to needs of the youth. And a clear vision and a political commitments is very much needed. Now, in 2012, both US and the EU have debated about their new farm policy. The US debated, US proposed, although the Congress has not approved, or will be approved in 2013. The European Union has also debated about their new policy. Some of the good trend is both countries or both regions, I don't know whether we should call EU as a country, have reduced their government expenditures that are directly targeted to agriculture production. So it's more income support. So less distortion to agriculture production. However, it is still the case that some of the programs have direct and indirect impact on agriculture production, distorting the world agriculture market. So these countries need to revisit farm policies, and it's a good time. Food prices are high, agriculture prices are high, so let's revisit farm policies. And promote more non-distorting trade policies. And we still have to work together for the WTO negotiation, although the results have not been very favorable or have been disappointing. But we got to use the global framework such as WTO to make sure that the global trade, particularly in agriculture, is fair, is open. More exciting is what have happened on the ground, in the country, in the region. So for Africa, we have seen tremendous progress in agriculture transformation. Nigeria, Ethiopia, Ghana, and beyond. And many of these countries have achieved more than 6% agriculture growth. But the countries still lack of capacity to cope with increased shocks and conflict. Sahel, Horn of Africa continue to be vulnerable to shocks. So the question is, how can we really build their resilience against these shocks? East Asia, as I said, China has released its first official document on agriculture. But in 2012, China has become a very large grain importer, 10 million tons of rice, wheat, and maize, in addition to already very large amount of import of soybean, 60 million tons. So if we add this together, 70, 80 million tons of food import. So investing in agriculture research infrastructure is so critical. It's not only important for China's food security, but also critical for global food security. Myanmar has taken some steps to reform its agriculture sector. It has great potential to become a food basket for many Asian countries. Thailand has implemented a policy to provide higher procurement prices for their rice farmers. So by doing that, their competitiveness have come down. So Thailand has slipped from the top rice exporter to second or third. And South Asia, Bangladesh is really committed to achieve its food security by 2021. So the Minister of Agriculture last year was here, so he was very committed. We have seen tremendous progress in the country. First time India tried to introduce FDI, foreign direct investment, in its retail sector, particularly food. That would give India an opportunity to improve its sector. But on the other hand, the small retailers, smallholders must benefit from that investment. Nepal has proposed to increase fertilizer subsidies, despite the evidence showing that these subsidies are inefficient, anti-smallholders in many cases. Arab countries, many countries have increased their investment in food security, in agriculture, but the food security remains a key challenge. Iran, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, even Egypt. Latin America has has really increased their share in global food production, particularly in Brazil. But we have also seen the divide between large countries and small countries in Latin America. It is small countries that have underinvested in agriculture research, in agriculture. It is large countries like Brazil, Mexico, that have really increased investment, increased its productivity, production. Now, looking forward, many global drivers will threaten global food security. So what are these options? Increasing agriculture productivity will be critical. If we increase the productivity to make sure that in 2050, the food prices will be the same as 2010, you will see the impact on hungry people. It will reduce the number of hungry people or the people, the population at risk of hunger by 30% in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. Higher energy prices will also push more people towards risk of hunger. Lower meat demand, or the lower meat demand, if we cut the meat demand in OECD countries and emerging economies by 50%, in some countries, the impact on poor people probably is 10%. However, don't forget there's another dimension. Some of these people, particularly in OECD countries, emerging economies, will become obese, overweight, and leading to huge health cost. So IFPRI every year construct indicators to track major food policy changes. These indicators include agriculture science and technology investment, public investment, including agriculture investment, global hunger index, food policy research capacity, and a total and a partial factor productivity. So we thought this data are very useful for analysts, for researchers, or even for policymakers in tracking, monitoring their progress. So we had a lot of talks, a lot of debates, a lot of commitments. We needed to walk the talk. Somebody even said that we should run the talk or even fly the talk. So building resilience at global, national, community, and individual level will be critical. The global food system has become so vulnerable. Give attention to dry areas. Dry areas have become very vulnerable. The climate change will hit them very hard. And further advance the nexus approach. 2011, 2012, we have seen increased linkages between agriculture, health, nutrition. We have also seen the increased linkages between food, energy, and land. But we needed to bring these two nexuses together, to agriculture, nutrition, health, food, water, land, energy. Yes, we have trade-offs among this, but there are also a lot of synergies. Let's fulfill L'Aquila commitments. So Michael is here. His institution is tracking the commitments of the various OECD countries or G8 countries. Many countries are doing very well, including US, but many countries failed their commitment. For 2013, we will see a lot of debate and lots of discussions about 2015, post-2015 agenda. Sustainable development will be there, and it is a must. Well, I think our growth, our society must be sustainable. But poor people, hungry people, must be the center or must be the focus of the post-2015 agenda. Well, thank you very much.